Our memory verse, John 3:12. Si os he dicho cosas terrenas y no creéis, ¿cómo creeréis si os dijere las celestiales? Okay? So we're going to go through that a little bit later in the lesson because it has to do with our lesson, but let's go through our vocabulary list. La cosa means the thing, right? La bendición means the blessing. Think of the English word benediction. El capítulo is the chapter. El versículo is the verse. El predicador, the preacher. El corazón, the heart. El perdón, forgiveness. La misericordia, mercy. Pedir means to request something or to ask for something. And predicar is to preach. So, pedir, I would think of the English word pray, to pray something, like to ask for something. And there's a different word for pray in Spanish, like is praying to God, that's orar, O-R-A-R. And then misericordia is kind of an old word that's not really used very much anymore, but it's definitely used a lot in the Bible. Today they would just use the words like compasión or probably clemencia, but this is a Bible word that's used a lot, misericordia. Perdón, think of pardon, right? And the verb for that would be perdonar. Corazón is heart. I'm trying to think of I guess there's not really a way to memorize that one very much. Coronary, right? Coronary, corazón. And then predicador, think of like a prediction. Like a lot of times prophecies in the Bible are talking about future events. And then versículo, just like verse. Capítulo, just like chapter. Just take away the H. Chapter, capítulo. Bendición, la cosa. So, today we're going to learn about the vosotros form. Now, this is one that we've been kind of just avoiding because of the fact that in most parts of the world today, it's not really used. Now, in Spain, they do use this to this day in normal, everyday conversation. It's just that in Mexico and California and Arizona, they don't really use it. Other places in the world, maybe in South America, they might use it, but it's definitely used a lot in the Bible. So basically, if we were to draw this out, I just want to make sure that you understand what this form is and what the difference is between vosotros and ustedes. Basically, if we were to draw this out on our chart, and this is our typical chart, which is singular, plural, and then first person, second person, third person, right? Now, if we were to talk about the subject of a sentence, okay, then basically in English, the subject pronouns would be I, right? And then, let's say we're talking King James Bible English, okay? Then this would be what? Thou, right? Okay? This would be he. Okay? This would be we. This would be ye. And this would be they. Right, does everybody understand that? Now, at the time that the King James Bible, does anybody have a King James Bible that has the epistle dedicatory in the front? To the high and mighty James, you know what I'm talking about? Do you have that in the front? Go ahead and open that up. Okay. In that, you'll notice that whenever they talk to King James, okay, they do not call him thou. Like, for example, it says, when he first sent your majesty's royal person to rule and reign over us. Okay, so notice it's your majesty. It talks about his child, your hopeful seed. And on throughout this, it basically refers to him as you. It says, hath so bound and firmly knit the hearts of all your majesties, loyal and religious people unto you, that your very name is precious among them. Their eye doth behold you with comfort, and they bless you in their hearts. So notice that it keeps calling James you. And yet in the King James Bible, it's referring to them as thou. And here's why. Because thou and ye are the familiar forms back then in 1611. Like people that you were friends with, people that you were very familiar with, it was not the formal way to address someone. Okay? Because the formal way to address someone would be basically, the term you. And for plural, it would again be you. Okay? So back in those days, they had a difference between the formal and the informal, like almost all languages in the world do. Except today in English, we've just gone totally to the formal. Just we call everybody you. We don't use thou and ye anymore. Okay, so does this make sense to everybody? Okay? Now, if we were to draw the same chart, okay, and we were to do objects, right? Direct objects, what would this be? The direct object. Because this is the subject of a sentence, and we're just talking about English right now. What would this be for a direct object?
Me?
Me, exactly. What would this be? Thee, very good. What version are you guys studying?
Sound like a competition for paces again.
Then you guys get motivated. And then what will this be? He is the subject.
Him.
Him. Alright, very good. Okay, what's this?
Us.
Us. Now this, you should know this from reading the Bible, because the Bible never uses anything formal. The whole Bible is written in the familiar informal. And, I mean, this word occurs over and over and over again. Ye is the subject. No, thou is the subject. You. This is the only time you, whenever the Bible says you, it's only the plural object form. Okay? So, that's the only time. If he says, I have spoken unto you, open your Bible to John chapter 3, because this is our memory verse today. And see, this is a good thing about learning foreign languages. It helps you to kind of analyze the English language too and understand it a little bit more. Because we all speak English not because we learned it in a classroom, but because we just grew up speaking it. So we kind of take things for granted. And so look at John 3:12, which is today's memory verse. If I have told you earthly things. Okay. So who are we talking to? Plural or singular there?
Plural.
Plural. And that's this word. And the only time this word ever occurs is plural when it's not the subject. When it's either an object, like a direct object, or an indirect object. Okay, it would be you. Okay, has everybody got that? So you'll never find a sentence, starting with the word you in the Bible as a subject. Because these are the only two subjects when you're referring to the second person of the Bible. Thou or ye. These are the objects, thee or you. So if it starts with a T, it's singular, right? In the Bible, if it starts with a Y, it's plural. That's the rule of thumb. Does that make sense, everybody? And then what would this be?
Them.
Them. Okay, so now in Spanish, let's do the exact same thing. Let's start with our subjects, right? So these are our subjects. We got our singular, our plural, we got our first, second, and third person, okay? So what is this going to be? The subject. We're doing Spanish now. What's that? No, we're doing the subject.
Oh.
Not the object. This is object.
Yo.
Exactly. Yo. Okay, what's this going to be?
Two.
Two with an accent over the U. Okay, what's this going to be?
L.
El, ella, or usted, which is the formal version of you. And then what's this going to be?
Nosotros.
Nosotros. Oops. And what's this going to be? This is what we're learning today. Vosotros. And then what's this going to be? Ellos. Ellas. And remember, ellas is only if there's a mixture. I mean, if it's only purely female. If it's mixture, then it's ellos. And then this is ustedes. Okay? And then for our objects, we basically have what? Me. Te. And if it's direct object, it's going to be lo or la. And then this will be nos, os, los, las. Okay. Now, in English, this is the same for direct object, for indirect object, okay? Whereas in Spanish, these are all the same. The only time it changes is that for an indirect object, this would become lay and lace. For an indirect object, what's an indirect object? It's when you're doing, it's to. In English, it would be preceded by the word to or for. So if I'm giving the dog to you, what am I giving? The dog. That's the direct object. Who am I giving it to? That's the indirect object. Okay. And then this would be reflexive. Okay, what you said here, say. That's reflexive. What does reflexive mean?
Do it yourself.
You're doing it to yourself, right? That's reflexive. So, how would I do my, now this right here, this is direct or indirect object in English. But let's say I were doing a reflexive chart for English. What would be the reflexive? Sometimes it's just going to be the same depending on the context, but a good reflexive word would be what? Myself. That could be the reflexive in English. This would be thyself. Right? This would be himself. This would be ourselves, and this has to become plural now, because we're dealing with more than one, right? Ourselves, yourselves, themselves. Okay, does everybody understand that? And then if we were to do the formal in English, then we could theoretically have the word yourself. But that's not going to be found in the Bible because the Bible doesn't use any formal terms at all. Which is interesting, the Bible, whether it's in Greek or English or whatever language it's translated in, never uses any formal terms, because God's not a respecter of persons, right? So it just kind of puts everybody on the same level. And it's written completely in the familiar terms. Okay. So does everybody understand that then? So the term vosotros basically means you plural. Like not you singular, but you plural. And it's the informal. Whereas ustedes would be the formal term, right? Because formally I would call someone usted or ustedes. And in the familiar, somebody that I'm buddies with, somebody who's younger than me, somebody who I'm not looking up to or standoffish with, is going to be vosotros. So the difference between vosotros and ustedes is that one is plural and one is singular, right? I'm sorry, vosotros, one's familiar and one is formal. Okay. Now, in most parts of the world, they always have this right here, tú and ustedes. Everywhere Spanish is spoken, they use this informal, tú versus usted. But in a lot of places, they basically just, instead of using vosotros, they just use ustedes for everybody. Does that make sense? Like, even if they're talking to small children, they're just going to always say ustedes. But they still use the tú and usted. But then in other parts of the world where this is used, they differentiate even in the plural between vosotros and ustedes. Now that we kind of have a basic understanding of what the word vosotros means, we've kind of stayed away from this in the conjugations just because it's not necessary for you to speak. But it's good because in order to understand the Bible, you're going to need to know it. And, you will maybe run into people who use this that are from other parts of the world. Or if you ever travel to other parts of the world. So it's good to have just a basic understanding of it. So let's do an AR verb, comprar, which means to buy. Okay? Comprar. We're going to draw our chart here. Okay? We're going to separate it into the stem and the ending. So let's throw our stem out there. And then we'll throw our various endings on. See, I'm so used to skipping this one. Okay, and then somebody help me out. What are our AR endings? O, as, a, amos, and then this one's on, and then today we're doing the vosotros, so basically it's an A-I-S with an accent on the A. Okay, so do you see that? Nosotros compramos. We buy. We are buying. Nosotros compráis. Now, this is that diphthong, and AI is a diphthong, right? I. Now, remember when we going back to the very first lesson, or maybe the second lesson of the class, we learned about how when you're counting syllables, this counts as one syllable. You remember that? So basically, words ending in A, E, I, O, U, S, or N get the accent on the second to last syllable. Words ending in anything else get the accent on the last syllable, okay? So basically, because this ends in an S, normally this would get the accent. That's why they have to have that accent mark to transfer it from here to here. So it's comprais. So this is still pronounced I, but it gets the emphasis, comprais, as opposed to what would it sound like if we put the accent here? Comprais, and that's not right. So it's comprais. So compro means I buy. Compras, not compro, compro, because this is where the accent goes, because it ends in an L. Compro, compras, compra, compramos, right? Second to last, ends in an S. Comprais, compra. That's where the accent goes, right? Does everybody understand that? So for the AR verbs, this is the one that you need to learn for today. That's really all you need to memorize about this. Ice. A-I-S with an accent on the A. That's going to be your normal AR verb ending for the vosotros form. Okay? Let's try an ER verb. That's to buy. Let's do to sell, which would be vender. Think of a vendor. Think of a vending machine, right? Split it up into the stem and the ending. Okay, let's throw our ER endings up here. Help me out. The O stays the same. What about this? Ace. A, Amos, and then this is basically, again, just going to become an E. Ace. So basically, the only difference between the AR verbs and the ER verbs is that all the A's become E's. That's all. O, Ace, A, Amos, Ace, Aim. So you say, well, what's the difference between this and this? Very little difference. Okay? It's except for one major difference. What's going to be the big difference between those two? Like, let's spell it out. Or wait, we're on vender. Because the A and the A, isn't it pretty much the same sound? Basically, this and this are pretty much making the same sound, right? A. Maybe this one's just a little bit longer. So think about it, though. What's going to be the colossal difference between these two words? In the pronunciation.
Where the accent is?
Where the accent goes. So it's going to sound dramatically different. Because this would be pronounced how? Vendes. You got to put the accent on the first syllable because it ends in an S, second to last. Vendes, vendes. So it's going to be very easy to tell these two words apart when spoken. Even though it looks like, pretty much the same, but it's all about that accent. Vendes is going to be singular. Thou art selling. Thou sellest. Okay? And then this is going to be vendes. Ye sell. Ye are selling. Okay? We should teach a whole class on how to speak like the King James Bible. Because a lot of people don't really understand, how it works. You think you just pick it up from reading, but sometimes you don't. And so it's good to understand it. So, let's go ahead and conjugate this out. Call it out to me as I go. Vendo. I sell. Vendes. Vende. Vendemos. Vendéis. Vende. Okay? Everybody got it? Now, let's throw out our IR endings. O stays the same, right? What's this going to become? It stays the same. ER and IR are almost exactly the same. This is the only difference between ER and IR words. This stays the same, this stays the same, this stays the same. But this one's going to change as well. Basically, it's just going to be an IS with an accent over it. So you can see the pattern here. Basically, we've got ice, ace, and then this would probably look kind of silly, right? So, you see what I mean though? See the pattern? So it's kind of unnecessary to have two I's in a row. So it just becomes, so it pretty much follows the same pattern, right? So that's it, ice, ace, east. So what did I put down for the IR verb for an example? Recibir, okay, to receive. Recibir. Okay? Draw a line right here. Now remember that the vowels in Spanish are pronounced A, E, O, U, always, right? So because you're going to want, your tendency is going to be to say like recibir, like that's how we say English, like like this sound right here. You know what I mean? Or like this sound right here. But that's not what it is. It's re. So, I mean, this is basically how you pronounce that word. Okay? This would be the way that you're actually saying that word. Recibir. Okay, you got that? So, that's how you pronounce it. Be sure you pronounce it. And this is never U. This is always U. Okay? A, E, O, U. Okay, so, what are we going to have here? Okay, well, let's say what, yeah, there you go. Recibo. I receive. Recibo. Recibes. Thou receivest. Recibe. Recibimos. Recibís. What?
Recibe.
Recibe. Recibe. Okay? So now when it comes to other tenses that we've learned, you know, the preterite, the future, the perfect, you know, we're not going to go into all that because I feel like it's not necessary for you to learn. You know what I mean? You're going to want to know the basic present tense though, the ice, ace, east, just so you have a concept of it. But you'll be able to recognize the rest because they end in S's, A's, I's, E's, you know, whatever they are. The preterite, be perfect. And, you know, I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's a little bit too advanced for this class. You know what I mean? There's no point in learning that. But let's go over our verse. Now with that all in mind about the vosotros con. Okay, si means what? The first word of the verse, we're going over the verse. If, what's os? Well, look down at the very bottom of your handout. See, os means you, to you, or yourself. That it's plural, you know what I mean? Yourselves, it should say. Direct object, indirect object, reflexive, whatever. So, basically, si os he dicho. Now, do we remember the past participle? Remember this? As, amos, on, okay? So, which one is it here? I have spoken, or I've said. Okay? I have said, because dicho is the participle of decir. Okay? Si os he dicho. So, if I have said unto you. Got that? Si os he dicho. Cosas, what does cosa mean? Cosas terrenas. Now, what does this word mean? Terrenas. Well, we learned this word already. La tierra, which means the earth. Okay? Think of terrain. Think of terrestrial. Okay? Si os he dicho cosas terrenas. If I have spoken unto you earthly things. If I have said unto you earthly things. Right? Got that? Because this is the unto you. The indirect object. Si os he dicho cosas terrenas. Y no creéis. What does that mean?
You have not believed,
Well, this is present tense though.
and you believe not.
And ye believe not. Very good. Si os he dicho cosas terrenas y no creéis. and ye believe not? And then he asks the question, and notice how they start question words in the middle of a sentence. They throw that question mark, which really makes a lot of sense, because then you can kind of combine a statement and a question into one sentence. Como means what? Just like how are you? Como estás? Como creeréis. Now notice the difference here. This is present, this is future. Creeréis. And we learned that a long time ago, but don't worry about it if you're not sure on that one. How shall you believe? That's future. Si os dijere. This is if I were to tell you. This is the conditional. Si os dijere las celestiales. If I, how shall, basically if I've spoken unto you earthly things and ye believe not, how shall you believe if I speak unto you las celestiales? Basically he's saying the heavenly. So basically the word that's missing, that's kind of implied, you don't have to repeat it in Spanish, would be las cosas celestiales. But since we're already talking about cosas, there's no need to repeat it in Spanish. So it's, si os he dicho cosas terrenas y no creéis, ¿cómo creeréis si os dijere las celestiales? How shall you believe if I speak unto you the heavenly things, right? Any questions about that? If you understand the verse, it's easier to memorize it. Because then you can kind of think about what is it saying in English and then transfer that over. Alright, and let's just sing one verse only of Hay una fuente sin igual.